Hi, my name is Elise Dewsberry, and I am the artistic director at New Musicals, Inc. We are the producers of the web series So Proudly We Hailed, and I'm here today with Addison Blu, who is the subject of our episode, Christmas in Afghanistan. Now, Addison, it says here on your bio that you are an Army Psyop combat veteran. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means?
Well, I'll go maybe piece by piece. The Army thing, when the Great Recession hit back in 2009, I said, I want to go do something a little adventurous. So the Army was the easiest, quickest way to get into the military. And once I got in, I found that I really wanted to do Psyop. And so I actually got in by going to the Psyop recruiter once I was already in the Army and saying, hey, I should join Psyop and you should take me for selection. And they said, what makes you special? And I said, I'll get a perfect fitness score and I speak 2 other languages besides English. And they're like, all right, we'll give you a shot. So it was 2.5 years before I made it in to Psyop. And at the Psyop graduation, the sergeant major, so he's the highest ranking enlisted man in the unit. And he came out to our friends and family and said, congratulations on graduation. You should enjoy this moment because all of these men and women are deploying in about a month. And I did. And it was to Afghanistan, and that's the combat veteran part.
Wow. Okay. And what does being part of Psyop mean? What kind of work do you wind up doing?
That's a great question. So Psyop is short for psychological operations, and there are, really 2 aspects to what Psyop does. One is to share information. So, we did in Afghanistan, things like run radio stations to both entertain, but also to put out safety information, to announce new schools and clinics. And then there's sort of the nefarious side of Psyop, where we might have to put out a misleading bit of information sort of as a decoy so that a unit can go and do a mission without, being interrupted. We might put out some, incorrect information, but that's part of, using psychological operations against the enemy. So.
Wow, that sounds fascinating, Addison.
Very fun.
I wanted to ask you, how did you hear about our project, So Proudly We Hailed, and what made you decide to apply for it? So
I write for Duffel Blog, which is a military publication, and I just finished the Veterans Writing Project writing fellowship with the Writers Guild Foundation in LA. And so I hear about a lot of these things. I'm known in my circles as a writer who writes on military subjects. Specifically, a friend of mine named Josh, he is a volunteer with the Veterans Writing Project, and he said, Addison, this sounds like you. It's creative. They need the stories submitted quickly. And he said New Musicals Incorporated sounded like a great organization. I believe he actually knew Melissa Milich, who volunteers for both the Veterans Writing Project and for, I believe, at New Musicals Inc. And so that was the connection. And once I saw the prompt, I said, I definitely, you were right, Josh, this is for me. So I was excited to submit a story. It was actually the toughest part was figuring out what I thought would best be suited by music and in the musical format.
So true, so true. And that actually leads me to my next question, because I was going to say, obviously, since you are already a writer, a comedy writer, you contribute to the Duffel Blog, as you mentioned. But I imagine trying to turn your story into a musical is a slightly different thing. So I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about what it was like working with your collaborator, Michael Fink, who wrote the music and with whom you co-wrote the lyrics, in turning your story into a musical.
That's a great question. I'll start by saying Michael is brilliant, and I can play some musical instruments, and I've done songs before, but what he does still looks like magic to me. So, sort of starting from the beginning, Michael and I met, and he started by just listening. He said, I just want you to tell me the story. I want you to tell me the details. And he really let me talk. And then there'd be times where I'd pause and I'd be like, do you have anything? He's like, nope, I'm just going to let you keep keep putting it out there. I think that made a big difference because when I had said everything I could say, and I was sort of waiting with bated breath to see Michael's response, he had so many ideas. He had so many inspired lyrics that he had thought of. He had questions that prompted new parts of the story to come out that I hadn't even contributed and offered. And then it became back and forth. After I got to do the big brain dump and Michael gave, a lot of responses and questions, then he'd say, hey, I have this idea for a section where maybe there will be speaking instead of singing. And I'd say, that's great. I was thinking this song could be in the style of, John Lennon, So This Is Christmas. He'd say, great, and go back to the composition. So I'd say we became friends after about a week of working together, because it's hard to click with people, but when you do, you feel like your guard comes down. So that was my experience.
That's fantastic. And you guys worked really well together and came up with a great episode, I think. And interestingly enough, your episode took a slightly lighter approach than many of our other episodes do, and to a potentially very dark subject. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about your own philosophy about how you use humor.
That is fantastic. I started learning about that by personal experience. So when I was in the military, I was on this deployment about which I'm writing, and it was difficult. There were challenges, you lost friends or just bad days. And a friend of mine printed an article from Duffel Blog, and I read it and I thought, this is fantastic, and it just lightened the mood, and everybody sort of got along to laughing about this same thing together. And there were many times where we just make jokes to get through the day, but seeing like somebody professionally in this sort of shared experience of, thousands of readers or tens of thousands of readers sharing the same experience of reading the comedy, that made a big difference to me. So when I got to the end of my time in the Army, my therapist in the Army said, if you could do anything after the Army, what would you do? And I said, I'd write for the Duffel Blog. And he said, okay, apply to the Duffel Blog. I was like, they won't take me. And he said, okay, bring in the rejection letter from the Duffel Blog when they reject you inevitably. He's like, you're right. And then we can go from there. And I applied and they accepted me. So it was good. It was good to be wrong that time. But I found that sometimes veterans subjects like PTSD or just even trauma, suicide, those subjects can be so dark that we feel like we don't have permission to talk about them sincerely. And if we both share a laugh, me, on the darker side, right? I'm talking about personal experience, and you on the receiving side. Now we have something in common. We both laughed about it, and we feel like it's light enough that we can tackle it like a real problem. It's not like a ghost in the closet or a monster under the bed anymore, because those don't make you laugh, right? Those are terrifying, and we've sort of taken the fear out of it. Now we can handle it.
But I do see in your bio that you also have a background as a professional gamer, a musician, a member of Mensa, and an entrepreneur. And I read that and I think, how on earth do you find time to do all of that stuff, Addison?
I do put that in there because I'm kind of confessing that I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I say always. When I was 17 and I went to college, I knew I wanted to write and write fiction. And my early mentors often gave the same advice over and over. Hey, don't just put your head down and write all day. Go do things that are worth talking about. Be emotionally qualified, so to speak. Feel stuff, do stuff, like love people, accomplish things. And then you'll have something worth writing about, stories worth telling. And when that's impressed on you that young and you're that sure that you're going to do it, then everything is fuel for the fire. So I said, I'm just going to try to accomplish anything that I want at any time. So, I became a professional gamer in college because that was a fun job. and succeeding at it was enjoyable. But getting into Mensa, that was, I guess, maybe a little bit of luck. It's not a. I scored on an IQ test in the Army, and they told me that I scored very well. And so I knew that was the same test Mensa used, and I went and took the test. And then being an entrepreneur, that was sort of figuring out how can I continue to write. So Duffel Blog is, you get paid a little bit by the article, but it's not something to live off of. I said, how can I keep writing entertainment every day and still, split my time? I don't want to put 40 hours in selling insurance, which is where I started out of the Army. I don't want to do something like that. So I bought an agency from someone else, a marketing agency, and I write marketing content. So sometimes the needs force it, but if I just think this is all serving the goal of storytelling, it sort of makes a lot of those tougher things more. I think of myself as the knight on the quest instead of the dad with a few kids having to go to work. It makes it more exciting and fun. So
that's great. It sounds like you have a very full and interesting life, Addison.
I hope.
Good. To wrap things up, I just wanted to say, is there anything else that you'd like to say in particular, maybe to other vets out there who maybe have stories to tell or don't know whether or not they have stories to tell? Anything that you want to say to them?
I will say this. I have met so many artistic and talented veterans. And I'll say that it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter whether you served in combat or even if you deployed. There are stories worth telling. And there's something about the experience of serving in the military that I think opens up a part of us that makes us better storytellers. And I think that's something that a lot of veterans don't know about, that they have more artistic potential than they think. And it is from military service, as illogical as that may sound. The very rigid world forces creativity, right? If you're in a uniform, you don't have much way to express how you want to look. But being able to solve that problem, being able to be yourself in a uniform, that's artistic, that's creative. Things like that happen every day. So I encourage veterans to try art more often.
Great. That's fascinating, Addison. Thank you. I just want to finish up by thanking you for your service and for your willingness to share your story with us to create this episode. And I hope that everybody will get a chance as soon as we release it to take a look at Christmas in Afghanistan and check out your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the support. I appreciate it.